Guilt about buying too many records. Have you ever experienced this? Let's talk about that and more in today's Q&A episode.
Channel 33 RPM.
All right, Q&A video. This first question comes from Gary. Gary writes, do you ever feel guilty about the amount of money you've spent on vinyl over the years? I'm going to say generally no, but maybe sometimes. And I'm lucky because I bought most of these records in my collection, like 80 to 85% when records were still cheap, right? Like 10, 12 years ago is when I was doing most of the purchasing, acquiring all those back catalog records. Compared to what we're paying today, it wasn't a huge outlay of cash. I was doing a lot more blind buys as well and that kind of stuff. So I wasn't feeling guilt about that. Even new releases before the current vinyl revival or whatever weren't incredibly expensive. Maybe where I do feel occasionally some guilt or some remorse is buying records in the modern era. Like by modern era, I mean in the past couple of years, where the price of new records and new reissues has gone up quite a bit. So I really do have to think twice when I see a record I want and it's like $40 or something like that. I have to think, do I really want this record? And where I may feel, maybe guilt's not the right word, maybe regret. Maybe where I feel regret is when I spend $40 on a record only to find out that it's not the best pressing, or to find out I don't love the record. Like if I'm spending $40, I want to get something that sounds great, that is pressed well, and that I'm going to listen to repeatedly, right? To make sure I'm getting good value for my money. And when I'm not experiencing that, when I'm not getting that, that's where the regret for purchasing that record may kick in. The same thing with compact discs. I don't buy a ton of compact discs, but I have bought a couple over the past year. I'm thinking the new Sebastian Bach and the new Judas Priest. And I listened to the CDs a couple of times. And because streaming sounds so good, I end up not listening to the CDs again and just end up streaming those compact discs. And I kind of justify buying the CD for the liner notes and supporting the artist and whatnot. But even the liner notes are getting harder and harder to read. At 50 years old, the small print is more difficult to read than it used to be. So I'm kind of talking in circles here, but maybe occasionally I feel guilt, but I would classify it more as regret. Before we get to the next question, I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Sidetracked Workshop. I've been talking about these guys for a while. The record storage cabinets that Sidetracked Workshop makes are absolutely stunning. These cabinets are the real deal, man. High quality, all wood construction, handcrafted in the USA by Sidetracked Workshop. This is not flat packed, bolt together furniture. The cabinets come to you fully assembled, and shipping is free in the US. Showcase your vinyl and style 33 years. Head over to sidetrackedworkshop.com to learn more. And when you're ready to buy, use code channel33 for a 10% discount. Huge shout out to Sidetracked Workshop for sponsoring today's video. Now back to the Q&A. This next question comes from Salkinar. Salkinar writes, what is the coolest record or CD you found digging anywhere except a record store or show, such as at a garage sale or thrift shop? I pulled a few of these to show you. And this kind of ties in with the last question where I was saying I bought so much, probably like 80% of this collection back when records were relatively inexpensive, which is why I don't feel guilt. But I'll show you a few examples of a few cool things I found at garage sales and whatnot. Where do I begin? Okay, I'll show you. I walked in this one garage sale probably like a decade ago now, and the woman there had a box full of records, and she said they were her son's, and her son moved away from home and out of the city. This is when we lived in Edmonton, and so she was just selling his collection. It was, I think, $1 a record. And this is one of them that was in the box. This is an original, still sealed copy of the Trick or Treat soundtrack, and I've kept it sealed. I have a play copy. So I've found no need to unseal this one. And of course, I've unsealed 40-year-old records in this channel before, and you never know what you're going to get. It can be hit and miss after being sealed for so many years. As we've seen, damage can happen. So these older records I don't even really open them much anymore, but it's cool to have anyways. Part of the collector in me that wants this stuff. But this was done by Fastway. What year did Trick or Treat come out? I'll put it on the screen here, but the movie starred Skippy from Family Ties. Ozzy Osbourne was in there. Gene Simmons was in there. Really cheesy movie, but one I tend to revisit this time of year, like around Halloween every year or two. At that same garage sale, I found, this one was $2 if I remember correctly. This is a beautiful, pristine, not pristine condition, but a beautiful copy of Kiss the Originals, which was the first 3 Kiss albums repackaged with a bunch of goodies in here, including a 16-page booklet, including 6 wallet-sized cards and a Kiss Army sticker. And everything, this is the Canadian version of it. The American one's slightly different. But everything came in here. Those are both of that garage sale for $1 or $2. A couple other things I found over the years at garage sales, $1 or $2. Here's a mono pressing of the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Are You Experience. It has a hole punch in it, so it must have been a promo copy or a radio copy at one point. There's the label. Another garage sale in Edmonton, I found a German pressing of Kiss, Best of the Solo album. You know it's German because of the logo. And that hype sticker there as well. Another one I found at a garage sale, again going back a decade, maybe 12 years ago, when the stuff was easier to find. Black Sabbath Volume 4. This has the booklet still intact. And it's on the old Warner Brothers label. And this may be the best thing I ever found in the wild. I used to put ads up saying, hey, you have a box of records kicking around the basement, I'll buy it for you. And again, bought them dirt cheap. I bought a box of like a couple hundred records for, I can't remember how much, $100 or a couple $100. And this was in there, SNFU. SNFU is a legendary punk band from Western Canada. And this was hand silk screened. I'll put the year it came out on the screen. This is a single for She's Not On the Menu. And last I looked, this was going for like $400 or something like that on Discogs. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this one because I feel like it should be in the hands of someone who's a huge SNFU fan. So I'm holding on to it for now, but I may sell it at one point. I was just kind of shocked by the value of this one. Okay, this next one comes from Keith. Keith writes, I'm in my 50s. I just can't seem to connect with most of the new music out there these days, so I find myself looking to the past and listening to bands that I never paid attention to in my youth. Are there any classic bands that you've discovered later in life? Man, tons of them. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you some of these bands I discovered later in life because as a teenager I was into like hard rock, heavy metal, and that's about it. I like other stuff, but I wouldn't admit to it publicly just because that's not the way we did it. But a couple bands I've discovered afterwards, like in my 20s and 30s. One would be the Ramones. I don't know why I never really paid much mind to the Ramones back in the day, but it was in my 20s when I realized how awesome they are. Pink Floyd is another one. I remember in 1994 when Pink Floyd came here on the Division Bell tour, and all my friends were going and freaking out over it, and I didn't understand it. Didn't resonate with me. So it wasn't until probably my early 30s, where maybe in late 20s, where I really gave Pink Floyd a chance. I got Wish You Were Here for Christmas for my parents one year. I was like, man, this is so good. So I went back in the catalog and really got into it. Another one I didn't give a chance at the time was Dio era Black Sabbath. I remember when I was a young teenager, maybe like 13 years old, I picked up a copy of Mob Rules. I found it at a used record store here for like $1 or whatever. I still have that copy, and I thought, it's okay. It's okay, but I was an Aussie guy. I love the Aussie stuff. So Dio, in my mind, was secondary. And it was years later in my 20s where I really realized how awesome the stuff that Ronnie did with Black Sabbath was. So there's 3 examples. Michael Allen wrote, if you could have sat in on the making of any album, which one would you choose and why? It's a good question, man. And this is one I had to think about quite a bit because there are so many awesome classic albums that came out over the years that it'd be so cool to sit in on it. Even albums that aren't my favorite. Like imagine sitting in on the sessions for like Michael Jackson's Thriller. Any of those iconic albums. But if I had to pick one, I had to pick one. It is dun, 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 Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz. This was Ozzy when he was hungry again. He had just quit or left Black Sabbath. He had this new band with Randy Rhoads, and they created such a masterpiece. And I would love to have watched these songs, first of all being created, but second of all just seeing Randy in the studio. Randy was Ozzy's guitar player because he was just such a legendary guitarist, and just seeing him double track those solos or triple track them, and just, man, this would have been awesome. I mean, there's so many other ones I could have mentioned. The first Van Halen album, first Black Sabbath album, but if I had to pick one, it'd be Blizzard of Oz. Rich wrote, do you have a favorite vacationing spot and a place or a place you haven't been? Well, man, there's been tons of places I haven't been, but my favorite vacation spot is probably anywhere in Mexico. Puerto Vallarta is awesome. Cabo is awesome. We try to go, I don't know, every 2 or 3 years in the winter to get away from it. And I love visiting Mexico. In terms of places I want to go, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this. I've been all around the U.S., from like Seattle to Florida, Vegas, to Chicago. I've driven or been so many places in the U.S., but I've never been to Los Angeles or New York. So those are high on the bucket list. In terms of further places, further destinations, I would definitely want to get to Australia in the next decade. And I really want to get to Japan, specifically Tokyo. I think record shopping in Japan would be awesome. Paul writes, any plans on coming to the UK? Well, speaking of travel, yeah, definitely want to get to the UK. I've never been to the UK either, sadly. A friend of mine just came back from the UK, and his comment was that things are quite expensive in London, but regardless, I definitely want to check it out. Okay, how do I say this name? Snickle Fritz. Snickle Fritz wrote, at one point in my collecting, I knew all my albums inside and out. I got a boost in disposable income and made significant additions to my collection. However, the growing collection started to exceed my ability to assimilate it as quickly as I had in the past. Has anyone's collections grown too fast to fully enjoy them? Man, this is something I have struggled with over the years. And as a kid, when I bought an album, when I got Blizzard of Oz, or whatever it is, I lived with it, I digested it, I listened to it over and over and over again. And as a kid and as a young teenager, at least speaking for myself, I just became so aware of all the nuances and lyrics and words on all these albums. And of course, over the years, I've lost that same attachment with a lot of albums. And is it because of disposable income? Is it because we get busy and don't have as much time to spend with an album? Is it because we don't connect with music in the same way when we're adults? I don't know what it is, but yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if I'll ever buy another Blizzard of Oz or whatever some of your favorite albums are. The first Black Sabbath, or Screaming for Vengeance, or Shout at the Devil, or whatever, like albums I know intimately. I know fully and completely. And yeah, that definitely happens. Or sometimes maybe it is money. Sometimes you just buy too many records and you don't have time to digest them all properly. But I definitely think that is something I've experienced as well. Hester Moffat, what's your favorite guitar and why is it a Gibson SG? I got a lot of guitars. This is one of my favorites. It's a Gretsch. I got this beautiful guitar. It's probably not in tune right now. It's not, so I'm not going to play it. I got this for my 50th birthday last year. We found this at Guitar Center in Fargo, North Dakota for $375. I couldn't believe it. It's such a beautiful guitar. And for that price, I just couldn't believe how affordable it was. So I love this guitar. Another one I love is this Fender Stratocaster Aerodyne. This was made in Japan. I got this one also last year. I had a Gibson Les Paul Studio. I've tried to be a Gibson guy. I've tried over the years, because your question was about an SG. I had an SG once upon a time ago as well. I had a Les Paul, and just to me, like the neck always felt like playing a tree trunk. It just didn't work with my hands. I've always been more of a Fender guy. So I sold the Les Paul, and with that money and a little bit more, I ended up getting this one, which I dig. But I got a bunch of guitars in my cases. I got a My first real good electric guitar was a Fender HM Stratocaster. I got that in 1988 when I was 15 years old. I love that one. I got a Maxi Strat. So many great guitars out there, but those are a couple of my favorites. Andrew Watson, do you own any ABBA albums and why not? I do. What do we have here? ABBA, the singles, the first 10 years. Look at that. Look at that album cover. Look at that late 70s hair. I don't know. And here's ABBA's Greatest Hits, Volume 2. I think I had some others, but ABBA, the music is really ingrained in my brain because growing up, my mom would listen to ABBA all the time. And our house is like Elvis, ABBA, Roy Orbison, a bunch of other ones. But I think ABBA has probably played more than any other band. So these songs are ingrained in my mind. ABBA runs through my blood just because of the way I was brought up. So yes, I do have some ABBA in my collection. Brian Phillip, Crown Royal, gonna do a special Channel 33 blend. Man, I wish. I've been dropping hints on this channel for like years now. Crown Royal, when are you gonna do this, man? I'm willing and able. I will promote it. I think that would be super cool. All right, 33rds, how would you have answered the questions in today's video? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. As always, I appreciate your time. I'll be back again really soon. Till then, keep on spinning.